Hello, everybody. Welcome to our fancy talk on DeployR again. This one's going to be awesome because it's going to tell you how to get DeployR installed and how to migrate to it. You probably hear it because you know that DeployR is awesome. You're stuck on MDT or something old that you want to get off of. And we're going to show you today how you can just migrate to this. It's so easy that you can just do it in an hour. This is 1 hour here. We'll show you just how to do it. That's how fast Mike and Gary can show this off. They make this all look easy. If it's not easy, we'll help you get along to get this migrated because you know you want to get here. If you still need questions, you'll be able to meet these guys at MMS in about 50 days. If you have questions during this meeting, we have the Q&A enabled, so you can ask in that area. We don't have the chat enabled. We tried our last meeting that way and found it was less disruptive to not have chat going on, so we're just going to keep that off, let you pay attention to this good detail that these guys have. At the end, if we can try to figure out how to let you go off mute, we will. If we can't figure that out, we'll just keep using the Q&A. That's the best option here to ask questions. And with that, I think we're ready to hand it over.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Brian, for that introduction. Mike and I are not in our normal places. We're joining you from the lovely Great White North here in Canada, where water comes in cardboard instead of bottles. So that's been interesting. But yeah, so we're going to be going over the different deployment scenarios, different pros and cons of each. And if you're in CM or MDT, some ideas to help you migrate. So we've got an agenda today of launching DeployR, like how do you get the task sequence started, the different methods, the different join domain or workplace join options, build and capture, because we still need that. Content options and migrating from MDT or CM, and then we'll hit the Q&A. So let's just jump on in. Launching DeployR.
Yeah, so for launching DeployR, typically you would launch it from media, being either iPXE, ISO, or USB key. But we do have some other options for launching it as well. So you can surely launch it from an existing operating system, and that's just by running a simple PowerShell command that reaches back to the DeployR server. You can also kick it off via an Intune app. This is kind of useful for actually bringing DeployR OSD to Intune, to where you might need to do like a wipe and load on a device, or even like tenant to tenant migrations is something that we've had quite a bit of request for, especially for mergers and acquisitions, that kind of thing. So definitely possible from doing it from Intune as well. There are also other ways that we can automatically run a task sequence based on putting a specific task sequence ID inside the Bootstrap file. So the Bootstrap is kind of what drives the process once it starts running, and then you can put in a bunch of different things inside of that process. So let me just share a couple of things real quick, Gary. Let's do the screen. So in our documentation, we're not going to actually do a demonstration of this, but inside of our documentation, we do have stupid Teams is in the way. We do have a couple things. How do I get this thing out of the way, do you know?
I think you should be able to drag it, like click those little dots.
There we go. So here's our documentation for starting a task sequence from an existing OS. So this is the little image that we had in the PowerPoint deck for you. If you want to go ahead and actually specify a task sequence ID, you could do that on the command line as well. So that's a very important point to note. We do have the option of kicking it off by specifying some other variables before running, which is kind of nice. And then do keep in mind that, whatever certificates you're using for certificates, it's going to need to be trusted by that existing OS. So you want to make sure that the machines have those as well. So next we have actually running it from Intune. So we have a simple example of how you can create a PowerShell script to put into Intune and then publish it however you want to publish it in there through the company portal. So, but yeah, that should give you some ideas in terms of how we can kick off a DeployR sequence via other methods. And we do have some other ways that we'll talk about in the near future with the 1.1 release as well. So go ahead and take it back.
All right. So deployment scenarios. All right. So for the different deployment scenarios, we can do just a generic work group. So that's just after the OS is done installing, it comes up to Ubi and you would just be doing like a local account to log in. There's no Active Directory join at that point or Entra. We do have the ability to join a domain, run different task sequences for Autopilot or do an enter join. And then there's other management platforms or MDM. So if you have Omnissa or anyone else, that you can plug right into that.
Yeah. And then also for other deployment scenarios, we aren't just limited to Windows client. So if you're still doing Windows Server deployments, we all, by all means, support Windows Server deployments also. So you might have a server OSD team that might be looking for a replacement for MDT or config manager, and DeployR can meet those needs as well. The other thing too is we not only deploy on the corporate network, but you can deploy over the internet as well. So that's very handy for remote work scenarios, disaster recovery scenarios, that kind of thing. So whether your users are in the office or whether they're at home, it doesn't really matter. You can service them wherever. So it works great for the break fix and disaster recovery stories for when all of your devices get wiped.
All right, so here we've got the different workplace join options. We use offline domain join for security purposes. Then we don't have to have any credentials associated during the task sequence like we did back with config manager or MDT. The DeployR server just needs to be part of the domain that you're wanting to join devices to, or have delegated rights in the other domain subdomains. So basically then when the offline domain join is happening, the server's creating the blob that is needed for Active Directory, and then when the workstation reboots, it will then be joined to your Active Directory. We also have the enter join, so using like the ppkg file that you can create, DeployR can go ahead and provision the device during the initial reboot. So you would add the ppkg file while you're still in WinPE, and then when it comes back out, it would be enter joined through that process. We also have Autopilot. So if you already have the device in Autopilot, then you can just run a regular like work group deployment. So once it comes out, it's going to already be connected to your tenant and will be presented with the Autopilot. If it's one that you haven't already put into Autopilot through your tenant, we have a step for Autopilot registration, which as long as you've set up the required app registration in your tenant, then it will reach out through the DeployR server and add the device to your tenant. And then when it's done, it will be waiting for you to run through the Autopilot process. So what that looks like in the task sequence. Here is our offline domain join step. So in my environment, I have it connecting to my domain name is 2p.garytown.com. I have a specific OU that I have delegated rights to for DeployR to be able to domain join devices. And here, now I know this is changing in the future, but in 1.0, it would automatically name the computer based upon the serial number. But you can set variables beforehand. So like in mine, I've already, at this point in the task sequence, I've already set the computer name to what I want it to be. So I'm setting then the computer name variable in the task sequence to what the current name of the computer is. So when this step runs, it's going to just ignore this and use the variable that's already been set. Now, let's say you have a lot of different organizational units. What you could do is have like a front end with your drop down and set these variables ahead of time. So if you've already set any of these variables, the step will respect the variables that have already been set and just ignore what you put in here. So that is one way to be able to dynamically join different OUs or even different domains using the same task sequence or subdomains that have been granted rights. Down here for Autopilot, we have the ability then to set a group tag. Now this would also work the same way. In my example here, I have basically the step twice with different group tags, but you could have the group tags set ahead of time as well, so that you'd only need one step. So like with config manager MDT, there's so many different ways to do it. So whatever like makes the most sense in your head to keep track of how things are working is what you could do for that. And then after the process runs, how the end of the task sequence is important too, because if you want it to go into the UBI afterward, we have what we call a finish action. And so when I want to have it at the end of the task sequence, I have it set to reseal so that it will run the sysprep reseal. So when it's done, it will be sitting at the autopilot screen to log in. And you can set this variable at different times and it will work accordingly. There's some of the templates have it already set automatically. And then enter join. Enter join. We have so the enter join step, there's really no extra variables with it. You have to go through the process that the documentation shows on the DeployR server. It will create the PPKG file for you automatically and upload that into a content item. So then when you run this step, it knows exactly what to do for that. It will grab that content item and apply it while you're still in the WinPE. So when you come out the other side, it would be joined to Entra. Right, continuation methods. So there's we have in the DeployR, after it's in WinPE and it goes into the full OS, that is the stage that we're calling the continuation method for how does the task sequence continue once it's out of WinPE. Right, today we have 6 different options. Setup complete is the one that I personally use the most. So that's leveraging the built-in function of the Windows setup engine that will kick off setup complete. And this is exactly how Config Manager did it in their task sequence. So it's what I've been the most used to in the last decade of doing a lot with Config Manager. So I know like all of the stuff that I wrote to work in Config Manager, all the scripts and whatnot, worked flawlessly, just moving them over into a run task sequence or a run PowerShell step because it's running under the system context. Whereas a lot of people with MDT, they prefer to use the auto admin login and the run once option because that is more like how MDT used to do it. Because sometimes they'll have different applications that don't install properly under the system context, and they needed to be run under like a user context, which would be like that default user one context. So those have been the two that I've seen to be the most popular. And then there's also the UBI and audit mode. Audit mode also works quite well for doing quite a few of the different app installs and whatnot. We have seen issues where like Windows updates themselves don't necessarily want to run in specific modes. Oh, I'm stealing some of Mike's thunder here.
It's okay.
So, yeah, I just wanted to show you where this is though in the task sequence. So when you apply your OS, there is this continuation method option on the apply OS step, and that is where you'd go ahead and set the drop down to which continuation method you want. Some of the templates have different ones set, so don't feel that just because a template set it to something specific means that you have to do it that way. I always go back in and change it to setup complete just because that's my familiarity and that's where I start testing. But we have some customers that will set it to UBI or auto login, for instance. So
Yeah, so the difference between the UBI and the autopilot mode is if you're using the basic autopilot task sequence template, that will be set for UBI. So it's just basically laying down the OS, injecting any drivers, and then that's intended to go straight into the autopilot process from there. Whereas if you use the autopilot pre-provisioning task sequence template, that will be set to audit mode, so that you can install some applications that you want prior to it actually going into autopilot, so that can speed up the autopilot process with apps already being installed. Second to the last is providing an unattended XML file. So this is really for those unique and advanced scenarios. We don't necessarily recommend this for a majority of the users, I would say. But if you do have unique use cases where you need to absolutely need to put some additional settings in the unattended file, what you should do is start with one of the templates and then add those sections that you need to add into the template. It's good to run it through the system image manager to make sure your syntax is all correct. And then you can create a content item with the unattended XML and use that as part of your deployment. But it's really for more of the edge cases and advanced scenarios. Same goes for the specialized things. That's really limited. It still sees it as being in setup mode. So you're really kind of limited with what you can do in that particular use cases all well. But I would say that the top like 3 or 4 are probably the most common.
yeah, and if you're thinking, oh, I am not taking good notes and I don't want to come back and watch this video over and over again, this is all well documented out on our doc site that go into each one. So build and capture.
Yeah, build and capture. So yep, that is definitely a scenario that we support. Probably not a lot of people use this option, but we do see a fair amount of people still doing build and captures. And really the reason for this is they've got large software applications that either take a very long time to install or they're very hard to automate so that you can get like full automation during a regular deployment sequence. Both cases are still valid with lots of school labs and things like that, where they need to be able to rebuild a lab quickly and not wait, 5 hours, 10 hours for a task sequence to run just because it's got so many applications to lay down. And then lastly, yeah, there are certain cases where the person before whoever took over did it this way, and so we can kind of continue to do it that way. So that might not be as good of an excuse, but it really depends on the use case and the scenarios that you face. So if we're not taking any functionality that we had in MDT or config manager in that case. So if you still need to do build and captures, by all means, you can do building captures. Now, let me just take my over.
Yeah, I just want to mention like one of the use cases in the past for building capture was faster download time, right? Because if you included it in your original download WIM, it would be a whole lot faster than having all these large applications with lots and lots of files. That excuse is really no longer valid with DeployR because each application, even if it's got thousands of files, when it's uploaded into DeployR, becomes a single WIM now. So you're essentially making the download times identical to either incorporating everything into the original WIM or having the apps separated. The only place where you will save time is the actual installation of the applications.
Yeah, so on your, since you need to create a content item for starting this, it's pretty simple once you do this, but create a content item with just a blank install WIM, and then you're going to come in, and I've created one here called just Windows Capture, where I just named it Windows Capture. Go ahead and set the content to point to where it is, and then we actually have a task sequence template for this. So if you click Add from template, and then you'll see it in the list here. Let's see.
You went right past.
Did I go past it?
No.
Yeah, that's what happens. Windows build and capture right there. So if we go ahead and clone on this one. Forgot to open it. Windows build and capture. It's probably this one here. So we've gone ahead and opened this. Yeah, same thing goes with your other sequences is you're gonna pick an operating system. So go ahead and click at it real quick, and let's just go ahead and let's pick this one. That looks good. We got lots of versions there. Yes, this is a Gary one. But at the bottom we see capture image step here. So really what we want to do is why is it not liking Windows capture? So all right, so you can give it a name for the WIM. Default, we just put windows.wim. But here's the content item that we're actually going to upload this WIM to. So if we scroll down, I've created this one called Windows Capture version 1, and go ahead and hit select. Now you do have the ability to create a new version with every build and capture you do. So if you want to keep monthly versions that you create or quarterly, whatever your cadence is, you can do that as well. But then customize your task sequence as you see fit, put all those thick applications in there that take forever to install, and then run it on a virtual machine, and it'll go ahead and create the Windows capture. So still relatively easy for doing this. If you still do this and have feedback, by all means, let us know. So yeah.
Let's do this again. All right. Content items. All right, so there's a couple main different ways that you can have the content brought down to your endpoint. One of the ways that we do is just directly from the internet, right? So your apply OS from the cloud, drivers and scripts can be run from the cloud too if you set up some unique ways to do that. But built in, we have the apply OS from CloudStep, and that will reach out to the Microsoft CDN and based upon the drop-down boxes for which Windows 11 build you want for 24H2, 25H2, the different languages. We find that this is one of the easiest ways for you to deal with languages. You can set a variable ahead of time or just set the drop-down box to the language you want, and then it will go ahead and download that specific language. Instead of installing several language packs after the fact, you can just start with the language you want. It's been pretty handy that way. Injecting drivers from the cloud. So we have a step that will automatically read the information from the endpoint that it's running on, reach out to our API and query based upon the make, the model, the OS you're deploying, it will grab the correct driver pack, pull it down, extract it in WinPE, and dismin the drivers all for you, so you don't have to keep track of any of that yourself. And then if you, this is custom, this would be on you, but there's also, you could also steal lots from my GitHub. I have a lot of different steps in my my process that will reach out to the different vendors themselves and download their content and install it, because I don't want to maintain the latest version all the time. So like VLC, Greenshot, even OBS Studio, because I like to have that on my devices. It will just reach out to their download location, download and install it. Now, and then the other method.
Yeah, so a point to note about the internet content is it's not peerable by default. We do have ways of making it peerable with DeployR. But this is where if you need peerable content to service remote locations that don't have great internet speeds or don't have good bandwidth back to the data center, this is where our peer-to-peer model comes into play. So any content item that you upload to DeployR that's managed by you is going to become peerable using branch cache. This applies to applications, so you can fully define and upload all of your applications into DeployR operating systems. So if you have your WIM files, or whether you're using the monthly media that Microsoft releases for Windows 11, or even some of the Windows 10 LTSC versions, you can go ahead and upload those to DeployR, which the LTSC versions you're not going to find on the Microsoft CDNs. So you will actually need to upload those. And then driver packs. So if you want to still control and curate your own driver packs, whether you're just using the ones directly from the catalogs from Dell, HP, Lenovo, or if you've got some off brands that you need to account for, you can create your own driver packs as well, and then keep those updated accordingly, but they will be peered. And then other items. So if you got scripts, tools, utilities, things like that, you can create a content item for those, and those can be referenced in various steps in DeployR. Now, the benefit to DeployR is when you create your own content item that's of a type folder, it's going to basically grab everything in the folder and create a WIM file for that. So most people are thinking, when they think WIMs, they think of an operating system install WIM, but you can actually use WIMs as containers because it makes it very efficient. First and foremost, WIM files are single instance. So if you got multiple files that are the same inside the WIM, it'll automatically single instance them. Secondly is we're downloading one file. So in the case of like a driver pack that might have 1,000 files or 2,000 files, downloading tons and tons of small files is very time consuming and can really slow down the deployment process. So by downloading one large WIM file that contains all your drivers is much more efficient for deployment times. And then lastly is that the WIM files under the normal compression actually is very good for data deduplication, which is what branch cache uses. So there's been cases where we've actually compared a Dell driver pack to an HP driver pack and actually saw 30-something% efficiency between the two WIM files, meaning that they share 30-some% of the same file blocks. So that's less that you're transferring across the wide area network in that case, which will speed things up. So
yeah, I just want to also mention, like when you're pulling things from the internet, it's the whole box of chocolate thing, right? From day to day. Today you might be getting version 1, and later today or tomorrow you might be getting version 2. So if you're trying to lock in on specific versions for testing, you would want to upload and manage that yourself. If you always just want the latest and you don't have like a QA process for application versions or driver pack versions, then going to the cloud might be the way to go. But for those organizations that want to have some sort of QA process to make sure that specific versions are working with your models and your applications, then uploading and managing that yourself would probably be the way you'd want to go and with that.
Yeah, I'd say regulated environments to where you need to maintain, testing purposes that actually test and certify a app or an OS before you make it ready for production, and then having the ability to roll back to the previous version in the event of an issue that happens. You're going to want more control over your content, and that's what DeployR is going to provide.
Yeah. So we're accommodating both scenarios. It's sometimes the conveniences outweigh the other things, and depending on your organization and level of regulation, then maybe just always grabbing the latest is just the way to go. But we want to make sure that we can accommodate any of your needs on that. So
Yeah, for drivers, I would say that we are looking at making it easier to create driver packs. So keep an eye out in that space as well.
all right.
Yeah, so one thing that before we get into the migrations from MDT or CM, this is a question that even came up this week, is I'm still using Configuration Manager OSD. Why would I replace it with DeployR? And that's a good question. It's a valid question. A lot of companies have years and years of development into their OSD processes, and which is great. And OSD is a great tool that has deployed lots and lots of OSs over the years. The way that we see it is that to be more forward thinking is DeployR. There are some differences between Configuration Manager and DeployR. The fact that we can handle content easily from cloud, like Gary was just saying. We can handle those remote scenarios much easier by having a DeployR server in Azure or AWS on the internet that clients can hit and rebuild and authenticate using Entra and MFA. So it's very secure, which is not as easy to do with Configuration Manager OSD. Plus, it seems that there's not a lot of development cycles going into OSD anymore. So we're not going to see kind of the advances that we've seen in the past that Microsoft put in when they had user voice running and that kind of thing. So if you're looking to make the switch, yeah, you might not switch over tomorrow, but definitely start looking at DeployR in that case to see how it can slot into your environment. And then once the time comes that CM gets retired, then you're not left scrambling for a new operating system deployment process. So getting into the cons of moving from either MDT or Configuration Manager is there isn't a automatic migration for task sequences. So task sequences can be very complex. If anyone's downloaded our WAS task sequences, you probably understand that. So to be able to handle kind of all scenarios and situations of the way people have used task sequences over the years it can be a monumental effort. So today we don't have a way to automatically migrate task sequences. But it is a great time to clean up and update some of those task sequences as you repopulate and rebuild those into DeployR. Now, the good thing is we have kept a lot of the steps the same, as well as a lot of the variables the same, so that it should make migration much easier.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap in variable names. So if you've got your config manager task sequence open, you can kind of start going back and forth and rebuilding. So the other thing with DeployR, a lot of well, let's just say the developers behind it know the engineers that are using it and testing it, and they know that we like automation. So they have kept the PowerShell a module for this and are keeping that updated as they include new features to allow us to do automation of creating the content items, applications, all sorts of different things in DeployR. So with that, I've already helped a customer with MDT basically script moving all their applications from MDT share into DeployR. So they just click run and it grabbed everything and it uploaded into DeployR, made an application content item for each one, set the installation. And so within, I mean, you click run and that's a couple seconds for somebody who was a slow clicker. And then, you go get your coffee, come back later and everything's migrated over and you can start putting those into your task sequence. The other nice thing for like configuration manager, if you've done a nice job of keeping your source in an organized method, then you can just go ahead and start pulling that right in, pointing at your current source repository. Especially if you've got like a dedicated server for your source, you can just keep using that, keep adding on to that and keeping your source over there. There is no direct link back to your source from DeployR. It's all web-based, so then you're uploading it into the DeployR content item library. It doesn't rely on a UNC path anymore like Config Manager did. But it is nice to have that repository for if you want to make updates to the content item in the future. Like if you have a script folder that you have added more scripts to, it's nice to be able to have that structure built so you can find things easily to update sources in DeployR. Other tricks that we've used, if you're using DeployR Config Manager today and you're using branch cache, whether you're consciously doing it or not, you have a lot of cache out in your environment. So when you move them to DeployR, you can set DeployR's branch cache secret to the same thing that Config Manager environment had. So as you're doing deployments, it's going to start using content that's already distributed out in your environment. And you'll be kind of surprised at how much content you'll be able to pull from peers without having done any additional work at all. And as we've already mentioned, a lot of the variables are already the same or very similar. And step names are similar. So it's pretty easy to start going back and forth and rebuilding your task sequences. Yeah. And here we are at a time, we've got plenty of time for some Q&A.
Awesome, guys. I'm gonna open up microphones here in a second. When I do that, you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask a question. You're gonna hear silence. You're gonna be nervous about asking a question. Don't be, because hey, we're all friends here. These guys don't bite. If you have a private question, a one-on-one kind of thing, you can take that through email. You can come see us at MMS. Everybody at 2Point is going to MMS. All the great geniuses, you can bump into them all week and you hit them up privately. But here, if you got a question, don't be shy and ask it, because there's probably somebody else who's got the same question and they want to hear that answer too. So feel free to speak up and ask. We also still have the Q&A in case you don't have a good microphone or you're just too nervous. You can use that space, and we've been answering questions there too. So right now I'm going to unmute and fire away your questions. We've got some time here to answer them.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Okay, my name is Hans. Hi. When I configure DeployR in an environment, and when I am in a very different network segment, how can I create there a caching content so that when I want to Autopilot cloud, for example, make Autopilot OSD cloud image, then it's not going to download it every time. So it downloads from the caching server or something else. Is this possible?
So if you're looking for doing peer-to-peer, that is when you'd have to make sure that you've uploaded the install WIM into DeployR, so that when you start pulling it down, you'd be creating peers on that network one at a time. We also have a task sequence that you could run on other peers on that segment that you would kick off from the existing OS, as Mike showed during thing. We have got the documentation where you run that PowerShell command on some of the different production devices, and you can cache down the content onto peers in that area. So that way, when you do need to do imaging, you'd already have peers available with that content to increase the speed of the deployment and not have to pull everything from the DeployR server directly.
But is it possible to do this with the Autopilot cloud installation?
So if you're looking to pull content from the cloud, then through DeployR, you would not get any peering because you're pulling it straight from the Microsoft CDNs versus pulling it through the DeployR server. That said, we do have a product, the Metadata Optimization Manager, where so if you buy the StifleR suite and get that all set up and deployed, and then you set up this additional proxy server, DeployR, when it's downloading the content from the cloud, it will route through our proxy server and take that content and basically peer-to-peer enable it. So moving forward, as you continue to use that same task sequence and pull content from the cloud, it would have generated the hashes needed for peering, and then could start peering cloud content as well as stuff from DeployR. It's just there's a few extra moving pieces in it. So today, the most simple way is to just upload your WIM into DeployR. You can still do autopilot task sequences. It's just instead of having the content pull from the cloud, it's pulling from your server.
Okay, so creating the own WIM image, and then it works with the peering. Okay.
Right. Yeah, you would just take your current autopilot task sequence you have today, and all you do is swap out that one step, the apply OS step, with the apply OS from DeployR versus apply OS from cloud, and everything else would stay the same.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Meanwhile, people think of more questions. So we did make the decision so the MOM component that we have today will be made part of the DeployR Enterprise Suite. So that will allow you to do peer-to-peer enabling of content that is third-party, such as Dell drivers and Lenovo drivers, or any Microsoft WIM image that is coming from the Microsoft CDNs. So that will be both cacheable without peering, as well as peer-to-peer to enable if you want to. So that will not be a part of the DeployR community side of things, but it will be part of the DeployR Enterprise Suite. The alternative to that is that you can probably also, if you have that, you can also enable the peering or the caching of USB sticks for locations where you don't have any server infrastructure, i.e. the MOM server isn't available to you, but you can still then utilize the USB keys to store the encrypted data at rest and then basically get the speed up that way. That is not in the product as of probably not 1.1, so probably be 1.2.
Oh, nice. Nice to know.
Okay, somebody's got a question. Speak up. We're here to help.
Hi, my name is Magnus. Just wondering a little how to manage it with the PowerShell when you want to automate manage process inside the product.
Do you have an example of like something that you're trying to automate?
And like deploying it to a server with names and stuff like that, so I don't sit in the GUI and do it and can have a flow from other places.
Okay, so you want like to automatically detect a device and provide it with a unique name and other variables?
Yeah, MAC address and all this, IP address, because we might not have the DSP and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there's probably a lot of different ways to do it. It would depend on, but it's all going to be something that you would write yourself today.
Yes.
I can give an example of one company is using our iPixie product. So during the iPixie boot, it's grabbing information from the device that's Pixie booting, and then it's running that against one of their internal databases to pull back a bunch of information, like which domain it's in, what name they want the computer to be, the OU, along with what kind of role the computer is going to be, right? So that then gets fed in through the iPixie process into the DeployR process. And so that was one way a customer has done to do like a zero-touch installation. As for setting like IP addresses, that's when you're going to be into that unique situation of having to somehow populate an on-attend file, which you
Yes.
could also do with like, I would probably say you'd somehow have to drop that information into the process through variables, generate your on-attend file on the fly, and pop the on-attend file into the right place.
So there's a couple tricks. First you're gonna have to set it in WinPE. So we do have a new
Yep.
feature that's coming in 1.1 that lets you run pre-execution script before it kicks off DeployR. Today I am just editing the WinPE shell.ini file to run this particular script. So this is one way of setting a static IP address in WinPE. So happy to share this if you reach out.
Yep.
So that's setting it in WinPE. In terms of running it, then the next challenge is if you're booting up and you need to run it in terms of your unattend file. So this is the fourth option I think that we talked about, specifying your own unattend. So this is where you're going to want to grab one of the templates and then actually open this with, do we have Notepad? Yes, we do. Notepad++. So once you grab the template, you make sure you don't touch any of the sections that do the continuation for kicking off DeployR, but you can add in your sections in here for setting the IP address so that when it boots into the full OS, it's got the IP address already set, and then can continue to reach out to the DeployR server and finish the task sequence. So that's how you would do it today.
Yeah, we do have a request in so that we'd have like variables we could feed into the process to set static IP during the deployment. So it's in the backlog somewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. But then it's good.
It's coming probably around May time.
Oh, good. I'm interested in it. I'll ask you later about it more.
It's nice
Thank
to hear other people wanting those features too, besides just us. It adds more weight to the work request that we put in when a customer wants it.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, and the
Yes,
beauty
would be
is
a
those
nice-
questions don't go away into the closet like Microsoft does. We actually see improvements all the time on this, and it's why it's such a great product. I mean, we can react so fast as a nimble company versus bloated layers of meetings and people questioning and doubting. You know, this thing is pretty mature already for a 1.0 product.
Yep.
Yeah. We have a dev team that I don't think sleeps, and they work on airplane. They just work from wherever. It's crazy.
So we got about 10 minutes left. That leaves a lot of room for more questions. I'm sure somebody has one.
There's one unanswered in the chat, Brian, as well.
I heard someone else want to speak up. I'll let them go first. We'll hit the chat on the side. If we don't, I'll read that one up out of the Q&A.
I have a question about the registered Autopilot device. Is that step multi-tenant?
No. Today you have to create the app registration in a single tenant. I know we've had customers with that request for multi-tenant type support. So I know we've got really smart people that are thinking about it. I just don't know when or if or how that will look.
Okay.
Hi there. This is Ed here. Just a couple of things. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
You can.
One is the Q&A I can't see because I know a particular environment that's denied. So having something in the chat might be useful. The other thing is if you've got like a, I don't know, CI/CD pipeline, if you've got like a series of servers that want to point at particular task sequences, we've done that previously with like via MAC address to point at particular MDT things. Is that something you can do with DeployR?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to the bootstrap.json file that gets put in the media that you can update multiple ways. So if you're booting with Pixie, you can definitely do some really cool injections with our iPixie product. But this is just a simple PowerShell script that does it based on MAC address. So for each MAC address, I have different task sequence IDs that get assigned.
Oh yeah,
And
I see.
and then the script is going through and opening up the bootstrap.json file that gets laid down and injecting it in there so that it's set up properly. So that was good. Did I have an example on that? We open already. Is it this one?
Is this in a docs?
They added in. There is one. Here it is, right here. So if you look at this example, go away teams. This is what the bootstrap JSON will end up looking like. Is if you put in the quote TSID quote and then the actual GUID of the task sequence ID in quotes as well, then it'll go ahead and execute that particular sequence. The other thing too, this is actually under our debug task sequence debug logic. If you do put a debug variable in here and set it to true, you'll get an extra command prompt that'll open up that you can do some debugging along the side there. But this is really referencing this TSID. So if you look under the task sequence debugging section, you'll see this particular syntax that you need to use.
Okay, thank you. It looks interesting.
Good questions. We have time for one or two more. All right, I'll just read one from the Q&A. Regarding the offline domain join part, can you please help me understand how this works without a domain join account like MDT or CM? And also, will we be able to leverage task sequence variables to customize the OU to which the device should join?
So the docs will explain exactly how it all works. So the domain join isn't done by an account, right? Or well, it's actually the computer account of the DeployR server that needs to have the rights to do it. So during the process, the client reaches back to the DeployR server with its information. The DeployR server then reaches out to Active Directory and says, hey, we need to create this object. And then it feeds that information back to the endpoint. So it's never actually going straight from the endpoint to Active Directory. So you don't need to like set up a domain join account like you did with CM. Now, it's a lot of it's similar in how you create the account, but you apply that information then to the DeployR server itself that is joined to the domain. So if you go to the offline domain join step definition doc page, it gives all the different information you need on how to set up the security rights in Active Directory to do that. As for your second part of the question about dynamically choosing an OU, yes, and I think that's in here too. If it's not, I will make sure to add it. But yeah, right there. So if you create a variable ahead of time, and the variable would be just OU, then and you feed that with the information you want, when it gets to the step, it will ignore what's in that box in the task sequence window, and it will use whatever you've already set as your OU. So in my environment, I have a drop-down box, and I have several OUs in my drop-down box, and whatever OU I pick in there, it's creating that variable at the beginning of the task sequence, which then once it gets to the step, it uses the variable that's already been created with the correct OU that I wanted the device to go into.
Awesome.
Again, it might be a bit of a basic question, but just to be clear, if you've got multiple people working on the activities, do they all share one DeployR server, or are there like little, how do they sort of co-work while remaining separate?
Yeah, so like today, Mike and I are sharing DeployR servers. We have a one primary one that we both collaborate from. So when we log in, we authenticate with our Entra ID credentials, and then we can go in and start making changes. It's one of those things though that you want to be a little careful, because if you're both in there editing the same one at the same time, I'm not sure exactly what might happen then, but and then when you're deploying it, you would authenticate to based upon what you told DeployR to be either a simple passcode or Entra auth as well. But yeah, you would have one instance of DeployR, and then everybody would use that for it, however many different DeployR admins you would have would be using that same instance.
Okay, but if you wanted, that sounds a little bit like things could go wrong. If you wanted lots of people to individually develop in their own sort of like branches, would they need their own DeployR server each on like a VM or something?
They could, I mean, it all depends on your environment, right? So they could just create their own task sequence inside of DeployR and start developing that way. And then once they get what they want, you could have a master production one, and then you just do like change management rules, right?
Okay,
So then
yeah.
you communicate properly and then migrate whatever new things somebody was thought up into your production one.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah.
All right, well, that takes us to the top of the hour. I guess we can wrap it up here. Thanks, guys, for, I think it was a great session, great demos, very clear, and good questions, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks
good
for
questions.
coming. Hopefully we'll see you at MMS. Remember, the whole crew is going to be out there. You should come and see us. Oh, Johan, you got something? Put a hand up. Is that you? No. All right. Thanks for coming.
I was trying to say
go
well
ahead.
done. I missed.
Thank you, Johan.
I'm the maestro, top expert in demos. Honored to have you here. All right, with that, we'll wrap it up, and thanks for coming, folks. Have a good day.
See you, everyone.